Thanks so much for everybody that was able to join us today. Appreciate you making time to hop in and talk with us. Today, we're going to be talking about overages, billable overages at Walmart. And we have one of our product managers, Hudson, here to kind of help us through. So yeah, again, just want to just first off introduce ourselves. So my name is Bry. I am a customer success manager for our enterprise team. I have been with SupplyPike almost about 9 months now, but I come from over a decade in the transportation industry. Spent time at a large Fortune 500 here in the area. So yeah, been with SupplyPike for about nine months or so, and couldn't be happier on the team. And then we also have Hudson, who is an associate product manager. He's with our Walmart and compliance apps. So I'm very excited to have Hudson on. Tremendous knowledge. He and Ryan are product managers for those products, and yeah, couldn't do this without them. Absolutely. So very excited. Hudson, do you want to introduce yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the kind introduction. But yeah, I'm Hudson Bercier. Good to meet you guys. I've been at SupplyPike for about a year and a half now. Very excited to be here to do this webinar.
Awesome. And it was in this moment I learned how to pronounce your last name. It was right then that I learned how to say it.
I've heard quite a few iterations of my last name, and it's quite entertaining sometimes.
You know, I've actually always avoided saying your last name because I didn't know how to pronounce it. But I do like that it's a very French Bercier.
Yes.
I dig it. I dig it. Awesome. Well, yeah, again, thanks so much for hopping on and joining us. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, we will be doing a Q&A at the end, but please feel free to ask them in the Q&A. If you look down at the bottom, you will see a Q&A kind of button. You can submit questions there. We will attempt to answer them as we go along. This will be kind of very back and forth, but then keep in mind, we will also have a Q&A session at the end. You can also feel free to ask away in chat. We will be responding to questions within there, or like I said, Hudson will answer them kind of while we're going through it. So yeah, please feel free if you have any questions whatsoever. This is 100% for your knowledge. So we want to make sure that we are answering and addressing any questions that you have. So yeah, with that, I will turn it over to Hudson, and we will be able to go over our overages within the app.
Yeah, appreciate it, Bry. Yeah, first just wanted to kind of start off with who is SupplyPike. We're a software as a service company that helps CPG reduce revenue loss by automatically detecting and resolving retailer compliance issues. As you can see here on some of the logos down below, we work with over 400 CPGs representing about $25 billion in retail impact across about 50 different product categories. So we certainly have a wide range of clients that we work with, and we're really excited to get to partner with them in order to kind of help with retailer compliance issues. So let's just get right into it. What are overages? I'm sure everyone here is wondering, like what exactly they are. If we've experienced them, you've understood the pain. But we're just going to get right into what are overages. So the amount of products sent to a retailer in excess of what is ordered. And so specifically from Walmart's side of things, this can mean an amount of inventory stock that exceeds the inventory expected. As you can see at the bottom, a good little visual graphic on, the invoice showing that you've sent 3 of these boxes or cases, but looks like Walmart had received about 6 of them. So that would indicate an overage. And so anything that is going to be above what you invoiced, and we'll get into some more of the details of maybe the differences between what billable overages are and maybe what comes in through on a fine for SQEP. Yeah, and like I just said, and like I alluded to, there are 2 different ways of understanding overages. The first of them that I mentioned before, billable overages. So overages that are, so if overages are just sending too many units to Walmart. A billable overage describes a situation where the revenue has been lost because Walmart does not pay for the extra items they received. These are billable because suppliers have seen success billing Walmart for these extra items. And so, like just that I mentioned, so this would mean comparing what you've actually billed Walmart for in terms of the goods that you shipped and what Walmart actually received using their own data. And so that would be the difference in billable overages. And then second way of understanding overages is the fine side of things. So overage fines are Walmart's way of de-incentivizing sending too much product to the DC and then billing for it later. In the SQEP program, or the Supplier Quality Excellence program, these fines are sent as a failure to comply on PO accuracy. So you might be wondering, what are some of the intricacies on what these differences are? So the way you can think about it is billable overages, like I mentioned, is actually going to be that difference between what you invoiced or billed Walmart for based on the purchase order and what they actually received. But on the overages fine standpoint, it is actually going to be what was on the PO line and in relationship to what Walmart received.
So
yeah.
Is another way to think of this kind of like a quote unquote double dip, if you will? So like the billable overage is going to be the difference, and then you're also going to get hit with a fine in the SQEP process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, I would say so for sure. And with that being said, so like you just mentioned, it could be a double dipping situation where Walmart is looking at the PO line. They see that they ordered this amount of this specific item, but they received over that amount, which would indicate that there is a defect, they would actually issue a fine for that. But then on the other side of things, because you can also compare it to what you actually billed Walmart for and what you invoiced for, and that Walmart actually received and didn't send back in some cases goods that Walmart has, but they actually never paid you for. And so from that standpoint, you can bill Walmart for the overages using a new invoice number, and we'll get into a little bit more of that later. Very excited. But then on the second end of things, you can actually dispute the fine on the SQEP side, more compliance side. So yeah, that's a great question. Any other questions you got before I move on?
Nothing so far, but we'll be sure and call them out.
Yeah, great. And yeah, like Bryce said before, feel free to leave some questions in the Q&A section. We can answer them as we go. We also have a section at the end specifically for Q&A as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Hudson.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Good little transition here to two common root causes of overages. So first of all, we've got true overages. Root cause of true overages are due to the amount of product sent to a retailer in excess of what is ordered. So like I was talking about in terms of the comparisons, invoice versus the receiving data versus the PO line, or what Walmart actually ordered in comparison to what they received. So a true overage will be a little bit more on the side of, what was ordered in comparison to what was received. And that would actually be a true overage, is that, you as a supplier or just a supplier in general, they might have sent too many goods in comparison to what Walmart actually wanted, which is kind of, a little bit into why Walmart would, inevitably want to fine for this, because they want to make sure what they ordered is what they get and not anything more, so they don't have to hold on to stock, things along those lines. And then on the other side of things, there's shortage triggered overages. These can happen by, PO number, if only one purchase order per truck or multiple POs on one truck. And so that can kind of come into play in a couple different ways. And I know that, often depending on the way that suppliers ship to Walmart, this could come down to either misreceiving or just due to the nature of how the product is shipped. Some places you might see one purchase order receiving short, one purchase order receiving over, or the same purchase order experiencing the same thing, which is a shortage and an overage. So cool. A couple reasons that overages may occur. Shortages, obviously, like I just mentioned before. Purchase orders sent to the wrong distribution center. That could mean you might be sending one product to one DC, one to the other, and it either means the wrong item was sent to the wrong DC, or it could be that you sent the wrong quantities were sent to the wrong DC, in which could, like I said, inevitably kind of be wrapped up into the shortages as well. Inaccurate demand planning, issues in Nova. And Nova, I know we've got some great content around Nova in terms of order management, but there could be some issues there where maybe a PO was canceled, and Walmart still received items, and they determined as an overage. Maybe they were similar items from a purchase order that they hadn't canceled or that wasn't canceled in general. Other things, issues with labeling and packaging, depending on how suppliers are actually sending their packages to Walmart and shipping their goods, tackling the whole how Walmart exactly receives the goods can definitely come down to how they receive it and how they label it. And so there could be some things there that can be done in terms of maybe, labeling it with a certain sticker, a certain color to kind of help coordinate with understanding when Walmart is actually receiving these goods. How are they supposed to receive it? Are they supposed to receive it on this specific purchase order versus another? Things along those lines to kind of help with confusion. Last thing on the list would be issues in item 360. That could mean a couple different things, but obviously with these being the overages being tied to more specifically items being received over what is ordered or over what is billed for, there could be issues that stem from item 360 as well. And then one question for the chat: are there other root causes of overages that your team has experienced? Please feel free to let us know in the chat or in the Q&A. But Bry, do you have a question for me?
Yeah. So somebody has asked actually. So when calculating the overages or the billable overages, how is that information being pulled? Like, how are they basically getting that you sent them too much?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that definitely comes back to when Walmart is looking at a specific purchase order, they're going to have an understanding of, what they ordered, for that number, for those specific items. And then they're going to look at within their own system what was received. And when they make that comparison, they can, just looking at those two, sometimes they don't look at, other purchase orders in which maybe that item was represented. But that's sort of how they're answering that right there is, looks like we've ordered about 10 cases of this specific item, but we received 12 cases of this specific item on this purchase order at this DC. It was not compliant. There's no overage defect here. That's where they're going to issue that fine with those two comparisons.
Gotcha. Yeah. So marrying up the PO versus the invoice, kind of finding those discrepancies. Perfect.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Any other questions?
We did get a comment that it looks like somebody just opened up a new DC and they're getting a lot more billable overages from that DC. Have you seen anything like that? Like just working out some kinks or some receiving issues? Walmart opening the and I'm not quite sure if this is the customer DC or no, I guess the DC, it would be Walmart, the Lebanon DC. So yeah, probably just working out some kinks with their receiving process.
Yeah, no, and I think you described it just really well there. I think, when it comes to opening up a distribution center, even for a company like Walmart, there are definitely going to be things that happen as you're starting, in terms of misreceiving or just, kind of solidifying processes, especially if it's a new area, that involves hiring a new team more than likely, things like that. And so, experiencing overages and situations like that is probably not uncommon for sure, as we see more and more DCs open up with Walmart and other retailers as well. So,
yeah, and it kind of, hits home the importance of this because, they're human. They're going to be making some errors over there. So making sure that you're running through the overages on your side to kind of get that back or to be able to fight those deductions. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of this kind of comes down to, in terms of a root cause perspective, yeah, just kind of evaluating how you're labeling and packaging some of your goods. Maybe there is some things that the supplier could do on their side to have an understanding of, maybe putting themselves in Walmart's shoes. How is Walmart receiving these goods? Is there something that can be done to help ensure that when Walmart is receiving one purchase order, they're receiving these items correctly, because they can tell right away that these items are supposed to be on here. But obviously, you can maybe do as much as you can, and sometimes, like you said, things just happen. And so we just, like you said, just fight it on the other end, and that's why we have lots of available data and solutions around that.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Well, if we have no more questions, we can move on to the next slide. All right. Ripple effect from shortages. Like I mentioned before, shortages can be a huge part of where overages are stemmed from. So the issue is compounded from if a supplier shorts on one DC's order and sends an overage to another DC. Like I said, it doesn't have to be the same purchase order in which you might see one item that's short, or the same item that's short, and one that's over. It could very well been have sent to two different DCs, which can make things a little bit more confusing. And so from that standpoint, let's say we're looking at an example of a collect supplier. A lot of times, it's out of the supplier's hand as soon as Walmart sends their fleet to pick it up. It might go through consolidation centers, or they might make other stops in general in terms of picking up goods. And so from that standpoint, things do happen, and things like that can result in a shortage in one completely different DC than the overage appearing. So yeah. All right. Impact of shortages and overages. There are a couple different things that can happen here. Obviously, first and foremost, a deduction could come through, code 24. Second, being a PO defect, like I was talking about before on the SQEP side of things, you could get an overage defect that will affect you. And then lastly, an OTIF fine that on the in full side specifically, where all three of these can kind of come into play. So, I mean, we were kind of talking about double dipping. This could you could consider this triple dipping in a sense, but there are definitely a lot of impacts in terms of shortages and overages, and as we'll talk about in a little bit on the feature, we'll kind of highlight a few of what we can actually do to sort of tackle these problems, or really on the other end of things when it comes down to shortages and overages. So if one DC's order is shorted, fill rate compliance will drop, and the supplier will not be paid for those unfilled units. But in addition to the deduction, the supplier may receive a PO defect fine, and the failure to ship on the in full side for the PO and then hurts the compliance scores. Obviously, we know the infamous 98% on the on time and in full side of the house, and how hard that can be to achieve. And so as we're dealing with shortages and overages, we know that there could be some issues with meeting those compliance and supplier scores. Yeah. Awesome. Now, wanted to transition to overages and SupplyPike, but first wanted to see if there's any more questions before we move on to the overages feature within SupplyPike.
Yeah, so we have a comment that one of our chatters, they've been recently made aware of underbilled POs. And is that something that the shortages do relate to the overages in that case?
That's a good question. I would say so. In terms of underbilled POs, that might I haven't run into that a lot, actually. That's a great question. I think when it comes down to underbilling on the purchase order, I would imagine that there is maybe room for that to be kind of I'm assuming that the question might be around, should we be rebilling for the remainder of that? Is that considered an overage? I wouldn't consider it specifically an overage. However, I know that in terms of rebilling, it can be a little bit of a confusing process. Do you send out a new invoice with a new invoice number? Now, in terms of their direct relationship with overages, I wouldn't think that on Walmart's side that they would consider that an overage. But feel free if you wanted to had any other context to that question or any sort of other note on that, I'd be happy to answer.
Awesome. But yeah, nothing else. So I'm excited to see and show what this looks like in our app.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'll go ahead and transition. Okay. All right. Bry, can everyone see my screen okay?
I am able to, yes. If you cannot, he has switched over to our in-app. So you should be seeing the overages within our SupplyPike Walmart app.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate it. Let us know if you can't see anything here. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So before I really dive into the feature here, I wanted to kind of bring back the two differences or the two ways to understand overages within Walmart. That first one, which is actually going to be what we're going to really be highlighting here, is the billable side of overages versus the SQEP or the overage fine side of things. And so here, we're going to be talking about really the more billable overages solution point of view. And so, like I mentioned, that's going to be the comparison between the invoice and what you actually billed Walmart for in terms of goods and what they actually received. And so, the purchase order and what is ordered is certainly taken into account here. However, the more important distinction into what is it that I can actually bill Walmart for, what goods have I not been paid for? That's going to be that comparison between the invoice and the receiving data. So let's just dive right in. As you can notice, these two big boxes here at the top, we've got some health metric KPIs here on our demo company. So first box, like I mentioned, that word billable, that billable amount is actually going to populate the total amount of not only in the dollar amount of what you can actually go after in terms of billable overages, but the number of purchase orders in which that affects. We've seen some with higher dollar amounts. We've seen some with lower dollar amounts in terms of how much per purchase order. That second box up there is going to be around overage payments. And so once you've been able to go through the process of sending a new invoice out, to get your money back on any sort of overage payment. This is when we'll be able to start tracking it on our end. And then you can actually see, is Walmart paying me back on these billable overages? And so we'll be able to sort of detect it on our end and start to track overage payments on the new invoices. So moving on down, we've got overages over time. So this is where we really start to break it down. And so as you can see here, we've got a couple different things you can look at. We've got, as you've probably seen on our deduction solution, there's a multi-month selector right here. And so I wanted to kind of highlight, each row right here. Or each column. So we do break it down by month in terms of how we're actually detecting, calculating, and presenting these overages. And so obviously right here for July, you can select that one. And we've got some functionality up here. One for the sort of pre-billing of the overages on the downloading overages. That'll give you the report for that month. On the second side of things, this is more so of the post. I've already invoiced Walmart for the overages. And this is actually going to be your payment report where it's going to show you some pertinent information around, invoice numbers for the new overage invoices on the original purchase order. It's going to show you payment amounts. It's even going to show you things like, did Walmart deduct it, whether it was some or all of your payment in regards to overage invoices. So yeah, wanted to kind of highlight. So it's going to be on a per month basis. We're going to show the amount of billable purchase orders that we've identified. We're going to be able to show the amount that totals up to, your amount owed, the invoiced purchase orders, the invoiced amounts, payment amounts, and then deducted amount. And so as we are building these reports. It's going to showcase kind of two halves of the picture here. When you download that report first, you're going to be able to look at the purchase order numbers that were involved and that we've identified as having an overage. But also we're going to show the amount owed and then the items related to that. And then from there, wanted to kind of make the distinction that as we sort of talked before, a lot of overages might stem from shortages, whether that was on the same purchase order or if it was on a different one. Did want to kind of call out here that, in terms of the way that we're identifying overages here, we want to make sure that we're identifying overages that are not directly related to a shortage, at least on the same purchase order. And then that way, when you're billing for overages, Walmart's not going to come back and say, hey, we want you to fight the deduction on this rather than that overage. And so, Bry, did you have a question?
Yeah. So can you just kind of quickly walk us through? So the question is there a way of disputing the overage? And, basically the way of disputing is re-invoicing for those overages, correct?
Yeah, I think you can kind of take that in a few different ways. So for this feature specifically, in terms of how we're actually tackling and disputing overages, this will actually be more on the invoicing side. So what we do at SupplyPike here is we're actually creating the report. We're doing, I would say about 80% of the work right here, where we're actually going out, we're grabbing from multiple different sources within RetailLink, within Walmart's own data. We're actually doing these calculations, identifying the overages into a downloadable report in which suppliers can then use that information to go then invoice on their own. Unfortunately, we do not have the ability to invoice on the supplier's behalf. However, we do have the ability to not only provide the report in which we've identified these overages, but then post-billing, we have the ability to help track and make sure that our suppliers understand where exactly they stand in terms of their overages in regards to payments, whether they got completely paid for them, we're all good to go, or you know what, there was actually a deduction on there. Let's go ahead and tackle that in our deduction solution.
Yeah, so basically our report is taking that information that we were talking about earlier, those purchase orders, those invoices, showing the discrepancies, showing the amounts, and allowing you to download that to re-invoice Walmart for that amount. And it's doing so by month. So it's that is the disputing, quote unquote, for the overages process. Like Hudson mentioned, unfortunately, we don't have that within our app because it is that invoice process, but we provide you with all the documentation to be able to go and do that through your invoicing process.
Yeah. And you know what, something I'd like to add there is, understandably, it would be nice to be able to invoice directly from SupplyPike. However, because we can't do that, I understand it can be a difficult process. However, something that we recommend for sure is to start small. These are coming out in month batches. And so we've definitely got a 2-year window that we've identified, as we can see down here. We've had this feature out for a little while. So it's just a hair longer than 2 years, at least currently showing. But being able to start out small, grab a couple of purchase orders, go through that process, whether you go through an in-house EDI process or if it's with a third party, and going through that process to be able to either manually or going through your normal processes to submit an invoice to Walmart, where it's going to be for the original purchase order, a new invoice number. And once that's sent over to Walmart, you might be asking, are they going to know, is this an overage invoice? So the reason that we're recommending new invoice number for the old purchase order is to make sure that Walmart is actually reading this as a normal invoice. All we're doing here is actually just recommending, hey, these are orders in which there are goods that Walmart has received that you haven't been able to get paid for. And so Walmart's actually going to read that as a normal invoice and, pay accordingly, deduct whatever that looks like. So does that kind of answer your question, Brian?
Yeah, for sure. And something else I wanted to quickly call out as well is I've had in the past customers that are running through our app and doing some overages, but they have previously sent an individual PO number that is part of, like, because we're doing in month, let's say they submitted one PO in June of 2023. something that you can actually do is download our overage report, remove that purchase order entirely from that report, and then use that to send. So just because you've sent one-offs, you can still go through our report and use that to invoice for that month. But you would just want to make sure that you remove those individualized POs that you have sent.
Yeah, that's a great call out, Bry. And yeah, with that, this report's going to actually break it down by item. And like you said, if you start small, and that's definitely what we recommend in terms of getting the process nailed down on your side, eliminating that purchase order within that report, and then being able to look at the rest. And something to be aware of is actually we're going to be able to identify sort of the gross amount in terms of what is actually owed, but then also the net amount. And what that difference is going to look like is if you actually are giving allowances on your invoices, we do take into account what that looks like. Not only we identify that gross amount before the allowances are taken into place, we actually identify what allowances you normally give on this type of invoice for maybe the department and sequence number identified, but then the net amount. And so if you just need to plug in that net amount where you don't have to worry about including additional allowances, then you can use that net amount to send it right their way.
Yeah, that's a great call out, because if you have a supplier agreement with Walmart and you're re-invoicing, you're going to have to take those allowances. This kind of eliminates that. You can use that amount to be able to submit that. And then Hudson, I'm not sure if this is going to be something that you get to here in a moment, but actually submitting the invoices, where would you go to do that? Like, you download the report from our system, you are invoicing. Is there any particular place that you go, or is it pretty much your same process for submitting invoices in general?
Right, that's a great question. Yeah, there's a couple different ways you could do this. Obviously, if you're a supplier that's been with Walmart or selling to retailers in general, you're going to have your normal invoicing process. So if this is if downloading the report and going through your normal process is going to be the best way for you to actually capture the billable amount, then by all means, we've definitely recommended suppliers go through their normal process. However, if this is going to be a little bit more manual, I know this could affect things around reconciliation, in terms inventory management, things like that. You can possibly go into Retail Link and actually go into Web EDI and create a manual invoice from there. And Brian, would you happen to have any more context around the Web EDI side of things in terms of manual invoices?
In regards to just submitting the invoices over?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I can't really speak to the actual system itself. I would say, through the web EDI process, your invoicing is going to be the exact same. Like Hudson mentioned, you would use that purchase order for the invoice number, and then you would just submit it through that process. I can't really provide any like specific context on it, but yeah, I do know that from the experience that I've had working and walking through with customers on it, there is not much difference if you're using the web EDI to your current process.
Yeah, and so in our a shorter history of helping suppliers actually bill for overages during this feature, and actually a little bit before that as well, we've experienced a few different ways that our suppliers have actually billed for overages. One of them would be like I mentioned, that normal invoicing process. They've gone into their system, input the items that are relevant, the original purchase order, creating a new invoice number, and then sending that over to Walmart. However, we understand that there could be some trouble around that internally in terms of how you're identifying the items that are coming out. The fact that this would be based on not actually shipping more goods, but then making sure that that's accounted for in terms of a more manual process. So depending on how your normal, either internal or external invoicing process takes place, definitely take that into consideration in terms of how you're invoicing Walmart. And then that way you make sure when you're actually billing for Walmart, you have an understanding of, where your items are in terms of inventory management and how you're actually going to reconcile it, maybe on a more accounting perspective. So, yeah. I think that's all I've got in terms of showcasing the feature here. Brad, did you have any other questions, either from the chat or from yourself, or before we move on to a official Q&A?
Plenty from myself. Yeah, so one of the questions that I just want to make sure that we're reiterating and hitting on is basically it are these deductions or are these just kind of discrepancies? Because one of the things that we're getting is, is this process similar to the overage that I'm getting in SQEP, and just making sure that we're kind of reiterating the differences between those. And also, you had mentioned you can get hit in a lot of different ways, the code 24, the OTIF, and then the PO issue. So, can you just kind of walk us through each of those individually and how they can, like, one order can show up in multiple different ways?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of different ways in which things like this can kind of show up, like you mentioned. And there was a slide before, sort of talking about a few different places where, like the deduction, the PO defect, or even on the on time and in full side. So on the deduction side, like you mentioned, that's going to come down to the shortage side of things. So let's say a purchase order showed up at a DC1 or whatever you want to call it. And they actually received only 10 of this specific item, that when they were supposed to receive 12. There's actually going to be a deduction that comes with that. Now, painting the picture in a broader sense, going to DC, let's say 500, where they received a different purchase order where that same item was actually received over what they were expecting. And so where that comes in is actually an overage defect or an overage fine on the SQEP side. First of all, those two can line up. However, you can understand that, at distribution center 1 versus distribution center 500, how that can be confusing on how that lines up, beyond just looking at the items, looking at the purchase order number, maybe even looking at the receiving dates, or even the trucks that they were on. But as Walmart is actually receiving and identifying any sort of issues, it's hard for DC1 to have a full understanding of why this purchase order is short when DC 500, which could be across the country, is receiving that same item over, and how that could be interrelated. And then on the other side of things, the sort of ripple effect from that is on the on time and in full standpoint, specifically on the in full side of things, where, because, we've seen a shortage on one and an overage on the other, obviously that's going to produce an in full fine on that side of the house. And so in terms of where this feature actually fits in here, we are tackling really the discrepancy. This is not actually a specific deduction. Walmart is not coming up to suppliers and saying, hey, we still have a lot of items that you've given us that we actually never ordered that we still owe you. It's actually a pretty manual process, which why I think this solution is so cool. We're able to identify using a lot of different sources within Retail Link, using Walmart's own receiving data to sort of identify what that discrepancy is, break it down, and making sure that, we properly identify what it is that a supplier might owe on the overages solution.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Yeah. And if chatter, if you all have any other questions around that, please let us know. We're more than happy to kind of walk through those differences even further. Hudson, another question that we had, or another comment that we had, is, somebody had mentioned that they have issues when submitting an additional invoice on that original PO. The EDI tends to require specific data, and it sometimes gets rejected.
Gotcha. Unfortunately, I have not had a lot of really in-depth experience in terms of specifically helping a supplier actually invoice for this. However, I have heard of issues around having trouble, like you just mentioned, where they're trying to invoice using that new invoice number for an original purchase order where it's not going to really accept it. And so from that standpoint, that's why we asked to, or we recommend that starting small, having an understanding of maybe what exactly your EDI system might require in terms of re-invoicing for an original purchase order, because I would assume that within that process, it's sort of stopping you in a sense from trying to rebill for something that which it identified as already been billed for. And so unfortunately, I don't have any strong or specific recommendations around how to tackle that. However, I would, if this is a third-party EDI provider, I would definitely get with their team and see if there's something we can come up with. Obviously, here at SupplyPike, we're happy to help with any other expertise we might have in terms of maybe there's some additional data that needs to be provided. I know the overage report currently has a lot of good pertinent information, but if we discover that there's more information that we could be providing, feel free to let us know if you are billing for those overages through our reporting system.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions, or I guess any other comments or questions specifically about the SupplyPike solution around billable overages?
I don't show anything currently. So yeah, I think we're good there. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to continue to add them in chat or the Q&A.
Yeah, great. I will go ahead and transition over to the Q&A section. And we can talk, we can talk more than just the SupplyPike feature. We can talk anything specific around overages or any questions around that. So feel free.
Yeah, and I appreciate you, Hudson, helping us walk through some of those Q&A questions, in real time. I think it was a good help to be able to do it with the app up. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help. Really excited. I know this is a newer feature, so if you haven't had the opportunity, if you're a customer, to check it out, by all means, it's right there on the side navigation. If you are on our Walmart solution, and yeah, feel free to check it out and let us know if you have any questions, concerns around what you're seeing. We're happy to help and very, very, very excited for us to be offering a solution up on the overage side of things, since it can be a little bit of a tedious process.
Yeah, and our team, like Hudson has mentioned, this has been live within our app for a little while now. And so our customer success team, we all have experience helping customers be able to walk through the process. So if you are a customer and you have any questions or would like to do a quote unquote working session with any of us, please feel free to reach out to your customer success manager. They are more than happy to do so. Awesome. Well, yeah, I am not showing any other questions in chat. I know we had quite a few going through, so appreciate everybody for hopping on and joining us through this. If you do have any questions post this webinar, please feel free to, again, reach out to your customer success manager. Feel free to always, anytime you're in our app, use the support function that can go directly to our team or to us directly. Or I believe our emails will be included with a copy of this webinar. Please feel free to reach out to Hudson or myself directly. Very cool. Well, yeah, there you go, right there.
There you go, like magic.
Like magic. Yeah. Again, thank you all so much for hopping on. I really appreciate your time today and really appreciate you going over the Overages app with us. Like I said, feel free to reach out. Our email's below or find us at supplypike.com. Thank you so much, and everybody have a great day. Thank you, Hudson.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
We'll stay on for another minute or so, but yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask away. But other than that, yeah, have a great day and happy holidays.